Hi everybody. So in this video we're gonna actually start by fixing the problem from the last video where basically the highlighting wasn't working as expecting. Then from that we're gonna go into turning the whole thing into kind of more of a generic state machine with inheritance. And then at the very end what we'll do is we'll make it so there's an exit option in the main menu, and we'll set it up so the game loop is no longer dependent on like where the user is on in the actual state, so whether they've beaten the game or not. We won't go any further, but that will be the next video. So to start, the reason why we had a problem was that 0 is the default font in ncurses, so you can't actually set it. So we actually just have to do this, right? And now if we go into here, we'll look at the UI highlighted. So we have black font with a white background, and then we have white font with a black background. All right, so if we run this, and we'll do like Sokoban, level 1, and you can see I'm bad because I didn't actually change the rendering when we're in the menu C++ file. So let me go into that. And so now we'll do UI regular, UI highlighted, and now if we do it, we should get, yeah. So this is what we wanted, and arrow keys and not arrow keys are still working. So if we do instructions, nothing happens, but if we go to play, we're cooking with gas, if you will. Okay, so that's working fine. And so the next thing that we're gonna tackle is we're gonna actually tackle changing the state class. So before we were using this enumeration, and it was okay, to be honest, but it was kind of getting a little cumbersome when we got into like here, right? Because we had to have these two different switch statements, and it was just kind of starting to get a little messy by the end here. Because once we started to add like instructions, level selection, and we just have to keep adding more and more code, and it was just becoming a little bit obnoxious. So what we're going to do is we're going to get rid of this, and we're going to change it to a state. Right? So it's a struct now instead of an enumeration. And there's going to be two functions. The first is going to return a state, a pointer to a state in this case, and we're just going to call it update. The second is going to be just a virtual again, void render. And in both cases, we're going to set it equal to 0. So it's a pure virtual function in C++, meaning has to be implemented for it to be called. And you also notice that in the past versions, I've usually had like a const int or const char. If in the earlier versions, I'm getting rid of that completely. And that's just because I think it's going to be a little bit cleaner by the end of it. So as a result, I'm also going to get rid of this function right here. And what you'll notice is that getch is returning an integer, and we're converting it into, or casting it into, a character. And so that's actually going to be why our key up and key down wasn't working from before. So we're going to actually end up going back and fixing that in just a little bit. And just so I don't forget, we have void menu update. We will change this in just a little bit. So I'm just going to leave a note for myself. Key up, key down, and we'll come back to this in just a little bit. Okay, so let's go back to our state. So that looks fine to me, but now what we're going to do is we're going to go into the menu header file, and we're going to actually take this and use it. And so now we're going to have to change the, so we'll put in an override character, override right there. And there's going to be an issue because it's saying override, but we're not actually returning a pointer to a state right now. We're just returning a state. So let's fix that. The other problem is this right here. Okay, so that's all good. But if we go into the menu C++, right, there's going to be a problem right here. So we'll change this to return a state. And then the next thing to do is you'll notice that we don't have a reference to this game. So we'll go back to our menu class. And what we'll do is we'll have a state, a pointer to a state, which is named game. So there's that. And now what we can do is we can do this, and we're going to return the game. In the base case, where we don't actually want to change the state, we're just going to return this. this being the struct, and that's all working so far. Out of line does not match any declaration in menu. So let's see. And the other problem is this right here. So we'll do this. And since we're here, instead of doing it like that, let's just do this right now. So I'm just going to change this. Since it's W, this is going to be key up. And we'll test this a little bit later. There's still some more coding to do in terms of actually handling the game state, because we actually haven't made the game state. So let me actually make the games stuff real quick. And we'll also do a game C++ file. We're not actually going to implement anything, just so it's there when we get there. So that's all good. Now if we go into the main C++ thing, you're going to see all this is kind of crazy looking now. So I'm going to just take this out, which is kind of exciting. And I'm also going to take out this, and I'm just going to give it the menu. So for this, we're going to do a pointer to. And we'll just keep this for now. So the problem is this, right, needs to be a reference. So what we'll do now is we'll state is equal to state.update. And it can't be a dot because it's a pointer. So state arrow update. And then what we can do after that is we can render. And now with our kind of state machine setup, everything's going to just kind of start to work. Now what we don't have right now is a game. So what we need to actually do, we'll go to game header file real quick, and we're just going to do a pragma once again. So we put a guard, and then we'll do struct game state, and we'll do that, and because this will save us some typing, we'll go over to the menu header file, right? And we're going to need these anyway, so let's just put these right here. And the other thing we're going to need is a Sokoban state. So that is our game state right there. And then we can also do this. And then we can also just take all of this. We'll stop it right there. And then we can go into the game C++, tag include, game header file, right? And we're not actually going to keep any of these, and we're not going to keep this, but this is just so it's working. And then we need to change this to be game. So now that's looking totally fine. So now if we go to the main function again, right, we can also say game. We can delete that Sokoban, but we can call game.state instead, right? And you can now see, let me put this down a little bit more. So now we have our base state right here. Now we can, in case we end up doing a different state, like if we want to do like a introduction state where it's like CFB Studios, because those are my initials or something, right? We can do that. And then this would be game.state. We're going to change this in a little bit anyways, but, and then we want to call game.state right there. Looking totally good. So what we haven't done, so now we're like setting up the state machine transitions, and we'll put in like kind of like a big comment right here, just so it's very clear. Set up state machine, and then transitions, and then I don't really think we need to. So the transitions right now are just menu.game is equal to game. And then remember, these are pointers, that's why we have to do the reference. And then game.menu is, oh, I don't have that yet. So game.menu. But this should be menu. Okay. So that looks all good. Set first state. Okay. So now what we can do is we just can add another one of these so it's super clear. And then we can do like init, and then we can do loop. Close stuff. We'll just call it like shutdown. I feel like shutdown is a little cleaner. Okay, so that looks totally fine. Maybe even decent. This right here I don't love, but we're going to be coming back to the Sokoban stuff in a future video when we actually start changing the game. So instead of quitting when the game is over, we'll actually change it so you go back to the level selection screen or the main menu, just depending on what we end up when we get there. Okay, so everything's looking fine, but if we actually try to run it right now, we're going to get an error, which is game C++. Doesn't actually return anything, so we'll just do return this for now. Now if we do it, we get a UI get character error. So let's see where I call UI get char. I do it here. I don't want that anymore. I also don't want the user input anymore. And then the other place where I have it and I don't want it anymore is I have it here. So if I do make now it's totally fine, but there's going to be some problems, right? So we go here and everything's fine, but then once we press play, we didn't call clear, so everything's here, but no matter what I press, so if I press like www, nothing's happening. We're in the game state, but the game state itself isn't actually doing anything. Where'd it go? Right, it's just returning this. So right now we're actually infinitely looping. So let's stop that with Control C. And now actually let's start being a little smarter. So what I'm going to do is in here, I'm going to call Sokoban update state and get ch. And I don't have end curses, so that's why that's not working, right? So that's totally fine. And then what I'm going to do is if Sokoban game over, and then I'm going to pass it in the state, right? If it's over, what I'm going to do is, what am I going to do? I don't know what I'm going to do in this case. I could return, actually I know exactly what I'm going to do. I'm going to return menu, and that's it. So we could also do like a ternary statement here, but I just, to be frank, I don't love them just because I don't find them super readable, but that's just me. So that's Sokoban state. What we're not doing is we're not rendering. So this is where we're actually going to get rid of another function in our UI. So right now we're going to need this. So I'm just going to take it for over here, and it's just a little helper function if you recall. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the UI, and I'm just going to take the whole thing. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to put it in here, and I think it's just going to be fine. Yeah. So now this UI is even less, and I'm also going to get rid of this whole thing. And at this point, you see we have this UI close, and it's just that. We don't really need that anymore. So I'm just going to call and win, and I'm going to get rid of UI close. Then we go into main C++. Now we want to go to UI header file, and we're going to get rid of UI close and UI render. So at this point, we don't really need this. We just don't really need this anymore, this UI in it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the menu header file. I'm going to put this in right here, and UI header file, we don't need any of it anymore. So I'm going to do rmsrc UI C++, rmsrc UI header file, and it's gone. It's like it never existed. So now if we go to the main C++ file, we have this. We need to get rid of this. And what I shouldn't have done is I got rid of the init stuff. So let me actually get that real quick. UI C++. I should not have gotten rid of that, but I still have a copy of it, so I don't need to go into the basic stuff. So it just goes right there. This is the basic stuff. This is the initializing, basically end curses with the colors. So we'll do like initialize end curses, initialize colors. Okay. So that looks fine. I'm gonna see, we don't need to call UI init anymore. So I'm just gonna call make and just see if we have any errors. So we have one in menu C++. So let's fix that. And we have this UI close. So in UI close, what did we do? We just kind of closed the win. So we'll just call and win. And what we'll actually do is we're going to come back to this to do don't error out, just stop running. And that will make sense in a little bit when we actually get to it. But let's see if now we have a working game. We'll go to level 1. So we can do this. Doesn't work. If we go to play, totally works. We can still restart, which is awesome. Make it unplayable. We are still totally fine. And boom, boom. And it's good. It went straight to there. But you could tell it just ended immediately because when we got rid of our UI close, right, it had that like get ch, so there was a temporary stop. But now we don't have that. And also, just as a reminder, the arrow keys, I don't know if this is helpful at all, but are now working properly because we're not turning it into a character along the way. So, but when we actually beat the game, it went into the menu, it returned the menu state, but it also just ended because if we go to game C++, or not game C++, sorry, main C++, we're doing this Sokoban game over thing. So I'm going to do what people tell you not to do, and I'm going to use a global just because it's clean in this one specific case, because it's just one simple variable. If we kept going further and further, I'd probably say don't do it, but since there's one global variable, I think we'll be okay. So we have this while running thing. So now when we go into, if we just did it like this, right? If we make, and then we do Sokoban, if we play, let's beat it. And you can see we're back in the main menu phase. But now there's no way to quit without control Cing it. And when we control C it, we kind of like skip all this stuff, I believe. So we don't love that. So I also do not like whatever this is. So let's do it like that. Okay. So there's our game loop. Everything about that looks fine. Okay, cool. So what we're going to start doing then is we want to start using this running as and make it a part of the actual like user experience, right? So we want a way basically for the user to say, I'm done running the game, let me quit. So the way we can do that pretty simply is we can do UI, if I could, oh, there's no UI anymore, that's right. So it's menu C++, and we've got this. So instead of doing all this, right, we can just do, we will keep this, and then we will set running equal to false. Now, of course, it has no idea what running is. So the way we fix that, extern bool running is equal, oops, if I could type, is just extern bool running. Perfect. Okay, the next thing is we don't actually have a way for the user to set that. So I'm going to increase the menu size by 1, and then I'm going to add an option for the player to exit. And so in this case, it will be case 2. And all we're going to do is we're going to set running equal to false. And then we'll break out. And we should also break out of this. Okay. So invalid menu selection index, this probably won't actually be printed, so it's something to think about. Maybe we like create an error file or something. Or we call like close when, I don't know, something to think about for another time. So now if we do Sokoban, didn't provide a level, let's do like level 0. Right, now we've got these options. So if I press instructions, nothing happens. If I press play, we go here, and I'll just beat the level real quick. And we're back at the main menu. Of course, it's unfortunate that we can't play other levels, but we're going to come back to that. And then we go to exit, and it just works. We're able to exit the game whenever we want to. So There's one last thing that I want to do before we end the video, and that's that we have this game C++ thing right here where we basically just call Sokoban update. But one thing that I've never really liked is this kind of functionality right here where the Sokoban game state is handling user input. That to me feels like something that's better handled in the game state. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get rid of this. I'm going to come back to it in just a second. I'm going to put this here. And we get this get ch right there, right? We get rid of that. And we no longer need this default. So we don't even care about the default, right? We just break Sokoban restart. And then what we do is we just call in here Sokoban update, right? State. And instead of doing it where it is, I'll just fill in this one real quick. Right, so now our Sokoban update is a little bit weird, so we need to fix it. So update, it's not going to take this anymore. Instead, it's going to take a constant, not at all, just a const point, and that's it. So now let's update this, and we'll do this, const pointer. Perfect. And so now our Sokoban implementation is just a lot cleaner because now it's just about updating the game state, and we have something else actually take care of this. So let me just do this, and then we'll, oops. So this one, we want it to be 1, 0. There. This one, we want it to just be a positive. And then what we're also going to do is we're actually going to add arrow keys as well. So that's going to be fun. Because I know some people, if they try to play this game and if it just defaulted to WASDF, that'd be a little confusing for them. So now we can do case key up, right? And this is key left for A. This is case key down. And this is case key right. Okay, so now if I do that, I can do make Sokoban. So if I do this, so now arrow keys are working as intended, but we can't actually see the up and down key. So let's make sure we got that right too while we're here. So up, so this is up, down, right, left. So arrow keys are now fully supported in the game, which is super cool. And all it was basically we were using a char when we should have been using int. So that's all working totally fine now. And we have Sokoban game restart. What we don't support right now is the ability to actually quit. So we can actually add that real quick. We can add quit real quick. A little tongue twister. Okay, so there's a couple things to say in that we could just return menu. But what would happen is the next time, I'll actually just show you. So if I do this, make Sokoban play. So I do quit now and then I play and we're back in the original state we were in, which is not very good. We kind of want to be so the player doesn't have to do that over again. Okay, so we just do a Sokoban restart before we go back. And now if we do it, we can get the state into a nearly solved state. I press Q, we're back here. We can press play and we're right back there. So now you're here, 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 and now we're back in the main menu. So that's looking good. And since I did that, I kind of think that's a nice little thing to add to our main menu as well, where if you press Q or case Q, we just do running is equal to false, and then we break. Double semicolon is no good. So now if I do make, boom, if I press Q, we're back out of the game. And yeah, it's just a kind of a much better little game I think that we've got going. The next thing to do is make it so we don't need command line arguments, and we want to add instructions because we still don't have that. But yeah, that's going to be as simple as just adding instructions header file and a C++ file and then implementing it, and then everything will be good there. And then from there we'll be able to go into like level selection and just finishing up the game, maybe adding a save state. Maybe we could do like a Dark Souls thing where we start loading and saving different profiles so you can have different playthroughs. And I've also been thinking about maybe finishing up with like an undo function, so kind of braid-like, where it keeps track of how you're doing through the level and you can undo to go backwards, but we're not going to go as far as Jonathan Blow did with like making it a key part of the functionality. It's more just going to be like an improvement of life feature. But yeah, that was the video. I hope it was fun. I hope it was interesting. And I hope that you have a great day. Bye.